Goodness. Okay, so yeah, we're just gonna walk through Chatops a little bit here and see if we can kind of establish where to start and that sort of thing. So this is the actual Chatops project, and I will add it to the doc as soon as Zoom controls. I'm just gonna move out of here. There we go. Okay, so let me just throw in these links in the doc here. So this is the actual project. Like if you want to make any changes to Chatops, this is the project where you're going to be making those changes and whatnot. And there are pipelines already, kind of in there. It'll do, it'll obviously run the test specs that are in the project. So that is one thing that you have to think about, is that if you're making changes, you will also have to make changes to the spec. For testing purposes, then it'll also do things like run Rubocop, make sure your Ruby is in line with, what we expect in terms of our Ruby guidelines and whatnot. So you'll want to follow kind of all the usual guidelines you do for GitLab development in terms of commit message length, all of those things. We basically use the same kind of guidelines for Chatops as we do for GitLab. I don't know that they actually test for all of them, but it's easier to obviously just follow the same guidelines. The thing that is kind of weird sometimes is it's sometimes a little, these instructions have really changed since I went and did it. So I haven't actually gone through these exact instructions, but the main thing is actually setting your local in order to be able to post to Slack so that you can actually have a test bot. And you can actually reuse someone else's Slack bot if you want. But usually I think it involves someone else's token. So let me just quickly, actually I'm going to reshare. Let me reshare desktop. And then I can, if I can still find, oh shit, there is I don't think I'm in it anymore because I was just kind of in this process of trying to clean up all these channels that I have. There is a Chatops test channel. Oh, here we go. So but you can see there's like a whole bunch of other people who have created their own channels for testing too. And like, I'll show you if I go into here, you can actually see they're not there anymore. But if we had more than a 90-day retention, you'd be able to see that I actually was doing a bunch of testing in front of this channel too because of that. So there is a Chatops test. Now this one, what most people use it for is actually running kind of commands that don't need to be run in production for the actual GitLab Chatops bot. The one, actually, what might be, if we actually look through the list of apps, we might be able to find it. Yeah, here. So you can even still see mine is still here. So I actually had to create my own Chatops bot. And then what I would do is I would run the commands locally from my Chatops, from the Chatops project. And that would kind of based on Slack tokens and stuff. I had invited it to one of those random test channels in order to actually get it to output things. And it's basically what you would run for the regular Chatops, but you run the command locally and then it just gets sent to Slack. It's been a while since I set it up, and I think I ended up having to revoke my Slack token. So I don't even know that I have it running anymore. But definitely I'd be happy to kind of help kind of work that out if need be. it shouldn't really be that hard because it does kind of work much like how it's described here. It's just that the previous instructions were kind of, I thought were kind of easier to just get into because it was like 5 things. It was like a list of 5 things, and it was a lot more than it used to be. But yeah, aside from that, it really is just using the API in the back end. And I can show you the merge request that I did a while back, and it's so you can see, say for this one, this was just a super simple thing, which I added because we were timestamp. So this came up when we were working on the confirmation email issue, where like security reset a whole bunch of people's emails to not be confirmed anymore. And it was just kind of this really annoying thing where it's like, okay, well, how do we even know if a user is confirmed? So using Chatops, when you were looking at a user's profile, you actually couldn't tell because it just didn't list that as one of the pieces of information about a user. But it is actually returned in the API. So all I had to do was actually just add it to the display. So I just said, okay, well, you know, in terms of title, this is just the text that it shows ahead of the value. And then this is the value to return. Because it's a timestamp, you can tell it to use the short version of the timestamp. And then aside from that, it was just, again, making sure that it was exposing that value from the API. And that's all I had to do because it was already in the API. It was a super simple change. I got Myron and Robert like merged it in less than a day after I filed the MR. So it was one of those like really good fast responses where we could just say, hey, there's a small change so that, the rest of support can kind of get things done. The one that I spent a bit more time on was this email one, because this one, interestingly, was to actually add the email to the search functionality. So users. So before, the way it worked was that you could only specify a username, because what it would do is it would, you can see that it used a username search. And so there was no way to search by email. So I actually had to add just like this generic search. Because our API, show you what I mean. So this is, of course, always based on our what we have in the API. So if we say users API, so this is what it was always using before. So it's using this endpoint where you were looking for users by the username. And because of that, that's why you couldn't search by anything else. And so I actually had to add, this matching where like, okay, well, if it looks like an email address, use the email and, use the generic search instead. So it's basically using the search endpoint. Or search endpoint. So it's using the user search endpoint. No, it's the other way around, I think. It should be listed here. Oh, wow, really? Is our search endpoint not? Oh, yeah. Okay, they just say it here. You can also search by name or primary using /users !search, right? So basically what I was implementing is the search equals to, because previously all you could do was the username equal to. So I added the search equal to this, find user. And then I just had to update. From there, all I did was I had to update the spec and stuff like that to make sure that, hey, and then I had to add a whole new case for searching by email, and what that would kind of result in. So this one was a little more work, but I mean, it's still fairly straightforward. So you can kind of take a look at what other people have done and stuff like that to kind of get an idea of what you need to do for certain things. I would say that where did we go? For this list of issues, I would say like changing something, anytime you're just pulling information will always be easier, right? Like,
yeah, I think the toughest part is, right, we have the auditor access for most of these, I think. The actual action we need to take is right related in a lot of these, which is definitely gonna make it a little harder.
Yeah, and certainly some of these will be easier than others. Interestingly, I think something like enabling or disabling 2FA might actually be one of the easiest of these, because it's just swapping of a flag from like true to false. Although, is there an endpoint for that? I didn't.
There isn't last I looked. I know Lyle had said that there was a feature request open to get to 2FA endpoints or something to, and allow removal of 2FA.
Okay, so you can filter in the search, but you can't actually change it. Okay, so if there's no API endpoint, then yeah, that's not necessarily going to work. But I think any of these other ones, like renaming a user or changing their email address, would probably be kind of on the easier side. Again, as long as there's a user's API, right? Then it's fine. Yeah, and Lyle linked to the API that you can use. So yeah, he linked to the. Oh, okay, here. Yeah, if there's an API endpoint. Yeah, so this one doesn't have one. So yeah, the put lets you rename a user or namespace. That's where the group API would come in, right? Like it's renaming the path of the group if need be. So those would be good. The other problem though, I think, is that pretty much anytime we take these actions, we also add to the note in the admin. And I can kind of show you what I mean. Just reshare. And I'll just use my own profile. I don't think there's anything. Actually, do I have? I should still have. Oops, I need an admin tab. Admin tab would help. I should still have a test user. There we go. Okay, so when we make any changes, whether we're disabling 2FA or whether we're changing the path as in the username of a user, then we would always add a note to say like something like, oh, we're the 12th today, but whatever. So name squat would just be like name squat request, and then we would link the ticket, right? So we usually put in the full link, but I'm just gonna put in like And so it would show up as an admin note. I think the problem we have right now is that the team added an API endpoint where you could change the admin node. Yeah, here's node. But it would overwrite it. So right now, if you want, I mean, I think what's interesting is you could potentially build this into Chatops, where if you're telling Chatops to change the admin node, to append it rather than overwrite it. So by default, the behavior of the API call itself, right, is to overwrite it. But I think you could build it into Chatops to say, hey, if someone uses the note command, right, take whatever is there and add whatever message they have, and then send that whole message back up through the API. And I think that might actually need to be one of the first things we implement if we're going to start doing changes through Chatops, rather than just being a read kind of function. If we're going to start writing things, I think we might actually need to do this one first, because then what you could do is say, like, okay, if someone disables 2FA, or if someone changes the name through Chatops, then not only would Chatops actually go do that thing, it should automatically even add a note to the user's admin node to say, hey, the username was changed on this date through Chatops. And then, have some kind of link or something, because every change through Chatops is a pipeline. So the pipeline, you could potentially link to the pipeline where that change is made. I don't know, I haven't looked the code as to exactly how easy that would be to figure out or build. Otherwise, you could even just link to, if you, as long as you still timestamp it, maybe you put the username of the person who triggered it from Slack. At least that way you could say,
or a parameter that requires some kind of link. Hopefully people would put a ZS link for.
Yeah, and at the or again, when you make the change, you can require that not only do they say, oh, what do you want to change, what do you want to put in the admin node. So in a single command, you could kind of capture all of that information, and then through the API again. Once you build in the piece where in Chatops where you can change the node or append to the existing node, then you can always just keep reusing that functionality within Chatops. So again, the only thing is, I think right now we have, it's interesting because it's not very clear in here, right? Like whether it appends or overrides, but I know, let's see if we can find it. I think. Okay, so this was interesting. So they made this one. Yeah, so I guess they implemented this. You can add a note, update note. It's still not very clear whether it actually overwrites or just appends it. Oh, really, people? Is it just pointing to, yes, it is. Okay. I swear it was discussed at some point, and I'm now having trouble finding. Well, we can look at the actual MR. See, yes, it sets a new note for the user.
So you'd have to read the value and then append, or essentially set the new note with the previous note and the new note.
Yeah, at least for now. One of the things we could do potentially is talk to, if we talk to, what's it called? What are they now called? Trust and Safety. They have like auto spam detection and stuff like that. And so one of the things we could do is kind of talk to them, just kind of ask them like how they are managing notes, because their spam detector or whatever, will block users and will link to the report, the relevant report. That's often kind of how we know if like a user, happens on the rare occasion where, you get a false positive. A user writes in and says, hey, I've been blocked. And that's actually how we know when it was because of bouncer. It's because there'll be a note with a link to a bouncer report. So I think, trust and safety would be the abuse operations. I don't know if they've kind of renamed that specific subteam, but basically it would be them that we could talk to about like, okay, hey, how did you solve the note issue? Like, are you just appending it like somehow? And I could have sworn we had a specific append issue. It's weird that I'm not finding it. Yeah, it wasn't added to this. I'm kind of surprised actually. Administrative tags, that's interesting. I don't know what this is either. Huh. Okay, well. Just gonna do a quick search. Access. Yeah, I'm surprised. Okay, looks like we don't have an open one. So that's the other thing we could do is potentially, open a feature request, but then kind of do it this way for now. And then, when the feature request is implemented, then we can, switch it to be something a little simpler where we say, hey, append note instead of having to do it on the Ruby side, right? Like do it on, just have GitLab make available an append function to it, to the admin note. And actually Harish and I, mostly Harish, Harish and I are working on group notes. So we're getting in the ability to add notes to group, to the group admin through the UI. We're not working immediately on an API endpoint, but of course we could potentially get someone to look into that. I think I got Harish to work on that one, partially because of like the database side of things that would be like migrations that would be needed for that. And then but once he's done that, I could probably find someone within support to potentially look at creating an API endpoint for the group notes. So we could do it for, we could automatically potentially do it for groups as well, where, you want to change your group name, sure. Just give me the name, but also give me whatever note you want to add to the group admin page.
So is there no tracking of that when there's like name squatting issues right now?
Right now, no. You can kind of tell just because of what we rename it to. right? Because like our instructions specifically say if you're renaming a namespace path because of name squatting, we add underscore idle to it. So it's a very specific way of doing it, but at the moment, no, there's actually no way to track when a group is renamed for name squatting purposes, which is one of the reasons why we kind of need to get group notes in there, right? It's because we don't, like you would basically have to just search Zendesk to find it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. This has been great. I have a place to start here and some things to look into, but it sounds like you're right that the first thing we should really work on is making sure we can fetch notes, update the notes, and append the notes, because each one of these automations, or rather Chatops commands, should it, like I can't think of an action that we would take where we wouldn't want to, aside from the group thing, an action that we want to take that shouldn't log who did it, when they did it, and if we have some ticket to link, that would be useful to at least get a little more insight. So,
yeah,
awesome.
for sure. And if there's, I definitely think that like up to this point, we hadn't really thought about it as much because they were mostly reactions, right? It was like adding things to what you could see from a group or user so that you can get more information out of it and actually at least even identify whether, things like whether a user was confirmed, whether a group was on a paid plan, things like that. So I think it's a bit different once you start writing things, right? You want to really make sure that you have some kind of audit trail. And like technically it's their Chatops. There's a, runs a pipeline every time someone is doing something. So in theory, you could search for it that way. But obviously for the purposes of, if someone is looking at a user or namespace, admin page, they're not necessarily going to think of, searching Chatops pipelines to see why something or how something was changed because, there's so many different ways to change it.
That's a good point. Yeah. So we shouldn't, have Chatops be the default audit trail. It should be notes based. Yeah. Whether it's, an admin taking that action or Chatops taking that action.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like even if we're doing it through Chatops, it's fine as long as like the note has, a date and even just a link to the like what's been done with and a link to the ticket or something. And we can always include people's usernames optionally. Like there's a few different ways we could potentially format it, but a date and a ticket link is kind of the absolute minimum, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for walking us through this. This is really helpful. Even seeing the examples and being able to go to the MRs and look at what has been done in the past and what's kind of how we can leverage that to make it work with these things that we're going to need to try to do. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, if you have any issues setting up like the local testing and stuff like that, let me know. It's been a while, but I certainly have obviously done it before. I could probably just do it again if I need to. There's a few things that I've been wanting to do in Chatops and I just haven't really had time. So more than happy to try to help here and there. And if not, I'd certainly kind of know at this point who Chatops is kind of a weird one when it comes to who to ping, because there's no group that is in charge of Chatops. It's just a few people who maintain it. And basically kind of what you need to rely on is actually the list of approvers is kind of who would be reviewing and merging your MRs and the code around Chatops. But there's no specific team. It really is just a group of individuals who happen to know enough of the Chatops code base to be considered an approver for it.
Is there any Slack channel that they use, or is it kind of just?
No, and I've typically posted in the development channel, which is a very broad, channel. And so what I usually end up having to do is actually post in the development channel and then ping. So if I have general questions, I will post in either the question channel or the development channel. And then when you need someone to actually review it, usually I just end up pinging someone, just randomly picking someone from the approvers list. And at this point, I think I've had at least half the approvers touch one of my MRs. So Stan, Yorick, Robert, Mara says she's like not super well versed with the Chatops code base, so she's only been willing to do like approvals or reviews for kind of really simple ones. I don't even know. I don't remember who else is in here. There's really not a ton of people. And just taking a quick look at the list. Does it still show a list of approvers? Yes, it does. Yeah, so these are a lot of the long timers, right? Yorick, Marian, Stan. But yeah, some of the, but even Robert, I've definitely had him kind of touch one or two of mine as well. And then some of the infra people like John and Alejandro are listed as maintainers, so there's no reason why you couldn't ping them. Yeah, if you like, what I normally do is I just ping one. If I don't get a response in a couple of days, I'll ping a different one. Like I hate to say, it's pretty loose. There's no like reviewer roulette or anything like that in Chatops, so you just kind of have to randomly pick and go from there. I would say just pick whoever you're most comfortable talking to, kind of thing.
Would it be convenient to set up a channel?
Chatops doesn't get, I mean, you can see from the list of MRs, Chatops doesn't get a lot of development even on our side, like for internal usage. And so, I mean, I don't know. It's at this point, you could certainly, especially if, we have, 2 or 3 people or whatever working on a bunch of Chatops stuff, it might be worth creating a Slack channel to, focus that discussion. If you want to. I mean, I totally think you can create Slack channels whenever you want. So, that's definitely a thing that we could do. And if you do create one, please, feel free to invite me. I'd be more than happy to, again, try to help in any way I can. But just in terms of like, if you need a MR reviewed and merged, it really is just taking a look at the maintainers and just grabbing one of them. Like whoever you're most comfortable working with really is kind of who I would say you should start with.
Awesome. And I'm going to take a look at the history for the instructions and setting it up, since you said the old instructions might be more helpful, or at least more simplified.
They're more succinct. I don't know if they're more or less helpful. And again, Chatops may have changed a bit since I was last really working on it. So it's kind of like, I still had it set up the last time I was still using it, but like I said, I've even revoked my Slack token since then because for security reasons. So I would even have to go set it up again. But I'm happy to kind of walk through that process with people. Especially if you're stuck. I'm really happy to help people get unstuck.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks again for taking the time. I know this isn't probably how your office hours usually run, but I appreciate it.
No, I mean, that's the point of office hours, is that you come in and you kind of just ask about like whatever you want, really, right? So you have any other questions now about Chatops? Okay, I'm just gonna stop the recording. I'll take it from there.